Here are 2 warning signs you need to switch podcast hosting platforms today. I'm Ty Gaucher.
And I'm Anthony Ranieri.
And in this episode, you're going to discover 2 warning signs that you need to switch podcast hosting platforms today, what particular analytics are best to be able to see in order to aid your growth,
and finally, the most ridiculous upsell that a hosting platform could ever give you.
So ridiculous that me and Anthony both nearly spat out our drinks when we heard it on a call not too long ago. So I think this is fair to say this is top of mind for us at the moment because we've had a lot of clients come with some pretty crazy things from hosting platforms. Things like not being able to see the most basic stats, getting charged extra to do certain things, just not being able to format things properly. When we started in the podcasting space, we really just assumed that hosting platforms, it's a given that they'll be of a certain standard. There obviously are only a handful of them for the most part, or a handful of major ones, and we just think a hosting platform is a hosting platform. It does what it needs to do. They're all roughly the same. Personal preference over the layout, but roughly it's not a big deal. We have learned over the years that some hosting platforms, even though they're major and quite mainstream, are surprisingly bad.
Say how it is, Ty. They suck. All right? They suck with a capital S, with a capital U, and a capital CK. They suck. We've had tons of clients recently literally moan and groan and say how the hosting platform is doing this thing and that thing. We're going to get into some of the weird things the hosting platform was asked for from our clients. I might be asking for you, so you can watch out for them. But the point is, it's become a lot more top of mind for me and you, Ty, right? Because so many of our clients right now are thinking about switching. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe at some point you've thought about switching. Maybe you're thinking about switching right now. Maybe you're wondering, well, how do I know whether or not my hosting platform is actually good? Whether or not I should stick with it, or whether or not I should just dump it today and switch.
So Anthony, what's the first warning sign that you should be breaking up with your hosting platform straight after listening?
It's 300 years into the future and you're a Gen QTR and you're using this platform, your hosting platform, and you're struggling to just find the most basic numbers. Point being, if you're using your hosting platform right now and it doesn't feel intuitive, it doesn't feel simple to use, if you're struggling to see the most basic numbers and you can't tell how many downloads you got in the last month within 10 seconds of you using the platform, that's probably a major sign you should be switching hosting platforms. Right, Ty?
Right. Yeah, I think you summed it up there. If you can't log into your hosting platform right now and tell us in 10 seconds how many downloads you got last month, then that's a very strong sign that the hosting platform is not easy to use or not intuitive or just even potentially withholding pretty basic information. Again, we thought this was a given, but actually it's not. There's a lot of hosting platforms that don't do this. We could go on, name some, kind of name and shame, promote the good ones, but I think that it's not relevant. It's not the point of this episode. If you can't easily navigate your hosting platform, and if you can't recall basic information quickly, again, such as how many downloads you got last month or how many downloads your last episode has, then it's time to make a change.
You don't need to be a rocket scientist, right? So that's the first thing. So I guess what is the second thing? So the first thing is, if it doesn't feel intuitive, what would the second warning sign be, Ty?
Well, the second warning sign is not having access to analytics that we would consider basic, but I guess some would consider advanced. Okay, that's incredibly vague. So there's a few analytics, there's a few kind of statistics that we believe are helpful to know and be able to understand and track in order to grow. And here's what the main things are. That if you don't have, then it's a sign that your hosting platform isn't top level and there's just no need for you to settle for that because switching is actually quite simple. Here are some things that we believe are important to have access to. Unique listeners. So the specific number of people that have been downloading your podcast. That might be in the last week, in the last month, on any given day, all time. All of these, you should be able to see the amount of total people who have played your podcast in all those different time frames.
And I guess like that makes a lot of sense, to be fair. That's quite a very cool feature. But I guess what's the benefit of that? Like, why does that even matter? Like, why do people need to know the unique number of people who've listened to the podcast, let's say in the last month, versus just the total number of downloads for that month? Like, why does that matter?
There's many reasons, right? But the two that come to my head the most is when you launch a promotion, That's a telltale sign of if it worked or not. For example, if you guest on another podcast and then the day it was released, the amount of people listening to your show is a lot higher on that day, then you can pretty safely correlate that people have come over from the other show, right? So it's good to be able to see it for that reason. And so the other thing is downloads per listener. You could see it as like listener lifetime value. It's tracking how many downloads do you get per listener, or how many times does your average listener actually listen to your show, right?
LDV, baby.
Yeah, that's the one. So, for example, if you have 100 downloads and 100 listeners total, then it means that there's 100 people who have each listened to your show once, right? And then, if you then have 1,000 downloads, let's say 3 months later, but also 1,000 listeners total, all time, then it still means that people have only come in and listened once and they've all dropped off. So you might think, I've grown, but actually you haven't really, because people are not sticking around more than once on average. On the other hand, you might have 1,000 downloads a little while later, but you might only have 200 listeners. And that's actually good. You'd actually much rather that, because it means that people are listening at lots and people are generally sticking around, right? Because the amount of downloads you get per listener has increased, and therefore it means that people are finding your show and listening to more and more of it on average. Does that make sense?
Damn, holy crap, who knew unique listeners was that important? But yeah, now you break it down like that. Let's get our LDV, lifetime listener value. Lifetime listener value. Lifetime listener value. LLV.
I'm sorry to all our listeners who just had to hear that.
LLV. Anyways, that's really cool, mate. So the two main things I'm taking away from that is that, number one, if you're going to apply a specific strategy to grow your podcast, a specific promotion, either you promote, your guest on someone else's podcast, you promote a newsletter, you do a crazy social media promotional spree, it allows you to track whether or not it's effective or not, because you can see, on average, is my unique listener for the period of the promotion, does that increase, right? So if I'm normally at 50 unique per day, does it go up to 70 per day? Then I know, okay, cool, that promotion worked. So great, it allows us to test whether or not a strategy, a growth strategy specifically, is working or not. I love that. And the second piece, which again, I love how you broke it down, which is like, hey, it just tells you if your content is actually binge worthy. If your listeners are binging your content, if they're sticking around and listen to more than one episode, which again is a very good indication of the quality of your show. The more listeners you have or listen to more of your episodes, the better your show is overall, and the faster you actually grow your show month after month after month. I love that. That was awesome, man. That was a good breakdown.
Oh, thanks. You really spoiled me. So the next metric is downloads per episode. Again, seems pretty obvious, right? Seems like surely that's like the first metric that you get. Well, we've seen hosting platforms where either people don't have this stuff, people really have to jump through a bunch of hoops to find this stuff, or worse, people have to pay extra for this stuff. That one was downright gobsmacking.
That's hilarious, that there's hosting platforms out there that are basically doing daylight robbery, charging people for the most basic stats. Like, how is that an upsell? I don't know how they're in business. Anyways, it's fair to say that when we heard this from one of our clients, and if this is you right now, this is the exact same advice we gave him, shout out Martin, that we're going to give you. Is switch to any platform other than the one that you're using right now, because it's basically just daylight robbery, right? It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And downloads per episode is very important, because really for similar reasons as before, if you do a promotion where you promote a particular episode, let's say through your email list, or let's say you're a guest on another podcast and you mention a particular episode, you want to see if people have actually gone and listened to that episode off the back of the promotion. And you need to be able to see that in different time frames again. So it's good to be able to see a downloads per episode in the last 7 days versus all time versus last 28 days or last 30 days, whichever. So with all of these metrics that we're saying, also being able to see them in different time frames should be a given. And really being able to isolate which episodes perform better than others and they're getting more downloads is crucial if you actually want to double down on what's working. And that could be looking at trends within the most downloaded titles. It could be looking at episodes that, could be grouping things by topics and seeing that when you cover X topic, it gets more downloads. So bottom line, downloads per episode, it's compulsory.
Hashtag back to school.
Back to school. All right, Anthony, you're up.
Sweet. And then the final one would just be like, if you're not able to easily format your actual show description or show notes with line spaces, and all essentially mean is just being able to neatly format your actual show notes. So not being stuck by like, let's say 50 characters, because some platforms have this where it's like literally you can only make a description that's 50 characters. Again, that's a show description, not show notes. But then when it comes to your show notes, just being able to format your show notes in a nice way. If you want things in bold, if you want things spaced out. So when a new listener or an old or a current listener views your show notes to read more about it, it's just easy for them to consume. And there's, again, some platforms that don't have that.
Lots of platforms don't have that. Even I'm going to call it, we said we weren't going to name drop, but I'm going to name drop one because it's the very own Spotify. Those guys, they have like 100 character limit on a show description. That is, I don't know why they do it. It's crazy. And if you're on Spotify, you would think that is one of probably the best hosting platform, right? But surprisingly, it has some really strange limitations. And to your point, Anthony, about formatting the show notes in a way that's readable, that's often overlooked, right? People often do their their show notes or their show description, and might not actually check out how it looks from a phone on Apple Podcasts. But if it's all grouped together in one big wall of text, that is definitely off-putting and reducing your conversions, even if only a small amount, to new listeners.
No, spot on, mate. Spot on. So look, let's give a quick recap. So the two major warning signs that you should switch hosting platforms, and we're going to give you a bonus. We're going to actually tell you what we recommend to our clients and what would encourage you to at least explore. The two warning signs are, number one, it doesn't feel intuitive. It feels hard. It feels like a struggle to get the most basic numbers. You can't tell how many downloads you got in the last 30 days in 10 seconds. And number two, if you don't have access to kind of unique listeners, like how many unique listeners you're getting, and you're being asked to essentially pay for additional stats and metrics.
That's like going into a shop, buying a bottle of water for $1, and then you get to the checkout and they say, oh no, it's $2 because you have to pay an extra dollar for the bottle.
No, you have to pay an extra dollar for drinking it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is just so absurd. And then, of course, being able to customize the timelines and date ranges that you're looking at anything at. You want to be able to look at how many downloads you got within any given period, or an episode in particular within any given period. So being able to be flexible about the date ranges that you're looking at things is a huge help.
So we've gave you those signs, red warning signs, and Tarek has also done something that I would never expect him, which is starting beef with Spotify. Please don't shadow ban us. We're just trying to improve your analytics as well as helping your users. Anyways, the main platform that we recommend to our clients and want to encourage you to explore would be Captivate. So that's captivate.fm. And honestly, the main reason is it has all of the features we spoke about on this platform. So if you want to explore that, have a look, see if you like it. If you do, great. If you don't, it is what it is. But that is the number one platform that we recommend to our clients, and we want to encourage you to explore. And yes, there is an affiliate link down below in the description. So that being said, we'll catch you in the next episode.